Why do people praise men for being
But it's
providers, but shame them for wanting appreciation?
I never shame a man for wanting appreciation. I
shut
give
up.
my man appreciation every day, and you better ask him.
I personally have a career of my own, and I'm certainly happy to contribute. But to some degree, I think every woman wants to be taken care of by a man.
You know, when I'm out in these damn streets and I'm out here having conversations with these lovely young ladies, what I do for a living often comes up in a conversation. Most of the times I just lie. I'll say some dumb shit like, yeah, I'm a mortician or some shit like that. But there's some times that I just want to engage in a conversation. So when we get into the nuts and the bolts of it, they will ask me, what was the reason or the precipice for the content that you deliver on your channel and your platforms? And I often respond that masculinity has been under attack for decades now. And it's resulted in the formation of a type of a man that even women don't even want. So being able to restore power to masculinity is paramount to the mission and the goal. And when I say restore power, it's shamelessly restore power. Okay? Anyway, we're going to head over to the It's Complicated channel. My brother from another mother over there, shout out my guy. He runs a channel that does street interviews, often in the Vegas area. And he asked these very questions. The episode that we have here today speaks exactly to this issue of masculinity being under attack. So we're going to assess what masculine duty actually means. So strap in, let's get ready, and let's get active. Without further ado.
As a man, you always have a burden of performance. This is why most homeless people are men, not women. You always, when you don't have the burden of performance, this is why more people who take their own lives are men as opposed to women. As a man, you always have a burden of performance. No one is coming to save you. Now, often no one's coming to save women also, but there is this thing with women where it's like, if you're an attractive woman, there kind of is a dude or a line of dudes that are like, I would absolutely be willing to take care of you. Whereas for me, I don't have big boobies.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to get after it in this conversation. Let's go.
When it comes to relationships, what does it mean when people say that men have a masculine burden of performance?
Okay.
I think they do. I think that is the man's job to, provide, protect. It's not necessarily a burden, but kind of a responsibility I think that men are born into.
The societal standards of that are put on men of like they need to be tough, they can't cry, and they have to be like the protectors.
Is that burden something men choose or something society forces on them?
I think that is what men choose by being a man, because you're masculine and you have the strength and you have the power and you should be the leader.
I think in some cases you could say that it's forced on them, but I think that in 2025 there's two ways to look at it. You can find a relationship if you look in the right places where you don't need that burden and where things are split in a more 50-50 sense. And there are also going to be relationships a lot of the time where people expect a certain level of continuity from a man, expecting him to do things that, have been expected for a very long time.
It can be a mixture of both, but I think it's more like the pressure from like the fathers of like, that's how they were raised, and it's like a societal and like generational
Expectations.
pressure.
Yeah. I think both can be true at the same time. Since the beginning of time, if men did not have this masculine duty or like this burden of performance, then the civilization would have not carried on. The species does not survive. Point blank, period. And that pressure in itself is not oppression for men more often than not, because it gives us purpose. You show me a sad, lonely, depressed, and unfulfilled man, and I will show you a man that lacks purpose. The irony is that it was the hardworking man that created a society civilized enough for future men to be purposeless. That's why it's paramount for each of us as men to figure out our purpose and to pursue it forward relentlessly. Let's go.
At what point does this responsibility stop being noble and start feeling like exploitation?
I think to the point of when women are using and abusing it, right? So like if women are like, oh, you're a man, so pay all my bills and take care of me 100%. But then I'm just using you for that instead of an actual intimate relationship.
Can a man reject this burden? And if not, what does that say about his freedom?
So a man can
so good.
reject this burden. However, it might not play well for him in the sexual marketplace.
Ooh.
A man can reject it, but he's not a real man.
What does that do to his dating options, and why?
It makes him very slim because he's not a real man.
Because
isn't it interesting how the man answered that question in a little bit more of an empathetic way, but but then the woman came in and, he ain't a real man, that's a bitch ass ninja. You're like, God damn, woman. You know, if so many of these women wants to define what a real man is or is not. Now, I can agree it may make him a purposeless man. It will make him a purposeless man. We can, but not a real man is goddamn crazy, right? Like, but anyway, for those women, how would you define a real woman? What are the things that y'all do versus not do that would not make you a real woman? And why do y'all not have a burden of excellence or a burden of performance for being a woman in society, or the definition of what a real woman is?
Societal norm, there's consequences to that of like
there is.
Maybe getting a partner is more difficult because they're looking for someone that holds like
big true
the masculine standard.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's any necessarily like huge consequences for breaking the norm.
I personally have a career of my own, and I'm certainly happy to contribute. But to some degree, I think every woman wants to be taken care of by a man.
It lowers his chances of getting the woman he wants because he's not meeting expectations.
How can women say that masculinity is toxic at the same time they want men to perform?
Ooh.
Oh gosh. I think it's confusion.
There's a fine line.
Damn.
So I think like in this society, we've kind of lost a little bit of it, but there's a fine line of being taken care of and being a provider to your family, and it kind of exploiting that.
Do you think that women have the privilege of being more picky because they have more options?
Yes, definitely.
So if men had more dating options than women, wouldn't it be women who had a burden of performance instead of men?
Absolutely.
So why aren't we shaming the women to step up instead of men?
Ooh.
I feel like women are shamed, just not as much as men are.
Why don't women have a burden of performance to become better partners?
Oh, I want to hear her answer.
If they don't want to be viewed as a mere sexual object?
It's gonna be stupid.
I think we like sexuality, and we are objects. We're all objects. And just take your role and go with it.
How would you feel if society expected women to always pay for men, open doors, and protect them physically, not as a choice but as a duty? Would that still feel like romance or feel like an unfair burden placed on women?
I feel like we need the men to do that for security.
Why is it not an unfair burden when that's placed on men?
She's a fool.
Because that's the roles. It's gender roles. I give you the pussy and you open the doors.
Oh my God. She must be from Atlanta, baby. I see her a dime a dozen all day. Half kind of pretty, but cooked, charbroiled. Never listen to a transactional young lady like this ever again. In fact, these types of mindsets is one of the mindsets that have led to the fall of the modern woman, and at least men rationalizing the modern woman for long-term relationships, if not marriage, today. My G's, don't you ever settle for a young lady that talks about her value is just within her box or her coochie. Because these are the same types of women that will weaponize her coochie within a relationship, within a marriage, to get her goddamn way. They don't think about self or continuous improvement. They're not cooperative. They're not teachable. They don't want to follow the lead of a man. And in fact, they'll run around screaming from the mountaintops that coochie runs the world. This type of mindset attached to that funky little box that she got down there is the exact type of mindset that you utilize for a short time and never a long time. Have fun, and that's it.
Because that's the roles. It's gender roles. I give you the pussy and you open the doors.
Do we assume that performing makes men more respected?
Why are women not upset that women will say things like that? Y'all should be upset. Like, is that the only value that y'all have is the box, baby. She said it. If I say some shit like that, though, they gonna cancel me, you heard? But she could say it about her own kind. How disrespectful.
Or more replaceable?
I'd say more respected.
If men stopped performing, would society collapse, or would it simply adapt?
It'd be done.
No, I think they would adapt, but it would certainly have a pretty drastic collapse. Not all the way through, but significant for sure.
I think like maybe women would step up, or like there'd be a few of like, I think everything's changing in the world, so I think if you break that norm, it'd change.
Why then are so many women complaining about being forced to step up and take on more masculine roles?
I think that's tough. I think that's maybe just like the generational being told they can't step up or they're feeling weaker. But I think there's plenty of women that have stepped up.
Think about just the infrastructure right here. We're in Las Vegas, right? The vast majority of the guys people who built this are men, right? A lot of men are controlling the world and providing a sense of structure in their homes in this world. Society would be in a very strong state of chaos if men were to be removed.
Why do you think a man's value is often tied to what he does instead of who he is?
I think those two are intertwined. What you do is part of who you are.
A lot of times I feel like guys present themselves as this is my job and this is what I do and this is like, that's like their selling point from themselves. So like surface level you don't get past.
If a man stops performing, stops providing, competing, or achieving, what happens to how people see him?
He's held at like a lower value, I'd say.
He's a bum.
So do you think men perform for women's approval or for their own sense of identity?
I would hope it was for their own sense, but I feel like their dick rules their mind, so it's for the women.
So what's the difference
hurt
between a
you?
masculine burden of performance and happy wife, happy life?
Ooh.
There's no difference.
Well, then
Oh,
how do you
wow.
address women's sense of entitlement without first addressing men's sense of obligation?
Hey, it's our roles. I'm entitled and you're obligated. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Is-
Atlanta. What's interesting about ladies like this is that they speak as if they're speaking from a position of power, but the real G's know that she speaks from a place of getting pumped and dumped, swinging from monkey branch to monkey branch, never being able to hold a consistent relationship, and not understanding why men never want to retain her. So to the layman's, this appears as women power, but to those that are more experienced, we see this as, baby girl, go get some therapy, all right?
I'm entitled and you're obligated.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Who's that laughing?
Is society built on men's sacrifices, or does society take those sacrifices for granted?
I think right now they're taken for granted because I think it's just like almost the masculinity isn't looked at as such a positive thing right now.
Do you think men perform for women's approval or for their own sense of identity?
I'd hope it's their own sense of identity.
No, he didn't ask you what you
Ultimately, it
hope.
is for their own personal kind of growth and whatnot, but I'd be definitely lying to you if I said that women's choices are not something that influences us.
What happens to a man that fails to perform? Does society empathize or discard him?
I think sadly discard him.
They
get
discard them.
ignored.
That is just the harsh reality of the world.
Of being a man.
Right? So I think as a man, it's really just perform or not. And yeah, if you're not performing, if you're not providing, doing X, Y, and Z, you're going to be discarded.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a winner, if you want to have a girlfriend, X, Y, and Z, you got to perform.
And here's the thing, and I've always said this from the beginning, the onset of my channel, I love competition. I love to have to perform. That's why I appreciate hypergamy. Because at the end of the day, I don't try to compete or be successful for women, but that's a byproduct. For me, it's my purpose. That's the number one. Purpose, purpose, purpose. The byproduct of being able to utilize or leverage hypergamy for whatever needs, wants that I have, again, is the byproduct. But the earlier that men understand the importance of your masculine burden onto society, how women will look at you, how your employer will look at you, how your family will look at you, the earlier that they understand that, the more that they can make more correct decisions that'll leave them happier or more fulfilled later in life. But never be mad, because we're not mad at double standards. We just understand them and perform or operate within them. Let's go.
So how does the pressure to perform affect men's mental health or identity?
Probably in a very negative way. I'll be honest, probably in a very negative way. However, it's just like you're a man. It's like put up with it, learn, grow, become better, or fail.
Yeah, it's very significant,
It's
and
stressful.
I think the vast majority of depression cases are based on that.
Yep.
Well, I know men have the highest rate of suicide.
4 to
so I
1.
know there's like a lot of pressure on men to perform correctly.
If women are loved for being and men are loved for doing, is that a fair arrangement?
I think
So
that
double-
is the way the world has been for
Yep.
many years. I don't know if I can say it's fair, but it's just what has been.
It just
the
is what
case.
it is. It's okay.
How does this expectation shape men's relationships with women, work, and themselves?
That's a deep question.
It's almost like, what would be the right word? Like you do something for me, I do something for you. So it's more of like, what would that word?
Transactional.
Yeah, transactional.
Does defining masculinity through performance trap men in a role they can never rest from?
I think it does, actually. And I think it does. And I think it is the burden of the man to take on that extra responsibility to, you know, take care of your woman, take care of those extra responsibilities, make sure that she's happy.
So once again, what's the difference between a masculine burden of performance and happy wife, happy life?
That I can't answer.
Are there cultures?
Here's the thing is that it does if you want to maintain in the matrix. You know, like if you don't want to maintain in it, the thing is, you know, create a business, you know, earn more in a short amount of time than what you normally would within a 9 to 5, or maybe start out in a 9 to 5 and then maybe create something, because it's not about your 9 to 5, it's about your 5 to 9. Create something. Now that we have access to the internet and AI, I think there's going to be millionaires and billionaires in the next 5 years created off of the strength of AI. Figure it out for yourself within your purpose. Try to earn as much as what you can in as little as much time. And then you can go abroad. If you're in the West, find a country that has a lower purchasing parity compared to where you currently are. One that maybe has a 5-to-1 or a 6-to-1 or even a 9-to-1 ratio. There's some places out there, whether it be in South America or whether it be out in the East, right, that for every $1 that you earn in the United States, it translates into $6 to $10 abroad. And then you could just create your own, baby. You can effectively retire way earlier than AARP age and have fun if you choose to, build a family if you choose to. But I think if you want to reduce the stress of male performance or the burden of masculine duty, then you have to go into a society that isn't operating at hypersonic speed, where competition is fierce, where the expectation from women is so delusional, if not irrational.
Where men are valued for simply existing, or is this burden universal?
I feel like this is definitely more universal. I feel like across the whole world, most people would imagine that the men would be the person to be the provider, to be the protector, to be the head of the household kind of idea.
It's interesting. I think there are cultures where men are certainly given a higher sense of value, but in those cultures also I've seen that there is a greater responsibility for them to perform and provide.
Why do people praise men for being providers, but shame them for wanting appreciation?
I never shame a man for wanting appreciation. I give my man appreciation every day, and you better ask him.
Would society tolerate women being told that they have a feminine burden of performance?
I think inherently they know that. Maybe a little un-PC to go out there and say that publicly, but inherently it is part of the culture, and I think they know that.
Why do people praise men for being providers, but shame them for wanting appreciation?
Yeah, I think it goes up to the idea that men shouldn't be outright asking for rewards. They should just be doing the hard work and naturally going out there and receiving it.
Okay.
If a man is expected to serve others, but can't question it, does that sound like duty or slavery?
Yeah, sounds like slavery to me, man. Ultimately, I do think the man has
like slavery.
The ability to control his own destiny, and he does not necessarily have to confine to the standards of his environment. You always have the freedom of choice. You can move.
How would you describe a system that rewards men only if they never stop performing?
Well, I mean, that sounds a little bit tiresome, but I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of how life is. It's like it's one thing after another. There's never really a break. And hopefully if you have the right people in your life, you're going to get that recognition, you're going to get that love, and you're going to get that care, and it's going to feel like it's worth it.
I compare it to a hamster wheel where you're constantly running on this thing. But ultimately, I do think that...
I compare it to climbing Mount Everest, but yet there's no summit. There's no peak. It's just a mountain.
There's a baseline in society where you can free yourself from the hamster wheel.
Okay.
And you get more and more choice if you so choose to live that way.
Okay.
If freedom means the right to refuse servitude, do men actually have the freedom?
I think they have the freedom, but are they willing to take that freedom?
They got to unplug.
I feel like so many people are stuck in their ways.
Yeah,
that it's scary to change from being an NPC.
She nailed it.
Can duty and freedom coexist, or are they always in conflict?
I think they're always in conflict. We've had duties, and you can see a lot of people here hate their jobs, but it is their duty to go out there and provide, take care of themselves,
to
take
do it
care
anyway.
of their loved ones. The goal is to find ways where you can create more freedom in your life. you start off with a lot when you're young. And
yeah, then it goes away.
I think if you make the right decisions, you allow yourself more freedom.
Yeah.
What would masculinity look like without the burden of performance?
I don't know. I feel like how I look at masculinity is like the protector and the strong one. So like without performance, I wouldn't really know.
I don't think they could necessarily exist without each other. There's always some level of performance, and that burden of performance is what keeps you honest and moving forward.
Does rejecting the burden of performance make a man free or lost?
I think honestly, I would say lost. If you look at a lot of young men smoking, doing drugs, partying, once they find careers, once they find the right woman, and they find something that really keeps them going, I think that's what'll help them find meaning in their life.
Can men redefine what performance means on their own terms?
They can, but it can be hard. I think you have to recognize that we live in a society, and a lot of our inherent sense of worth comes from how we can help others in society.
Is masculinity about freedom or about responsibility?
I think right now in society, it's about responsibility.
So then how can men redefine what performance means on their own terms?
Good question.
Well, it's going to be a slow process. It wouldn't be like an overnight change, but it's like getting out there. Like I think even like gender right now is being reevaluated. So I think everything can be reevaluated and changed over time. Would I know what that looks like? No, because I'm a female. So that's hard for me to look at what that would be.
All right.
Core of it is responsibility, but we also have a responsibility to care about our freedom, right? It's the inherent American dream. You have to go out there and fight for it, though, and it's a responsibility to go out there and pursue it.
Here's the thing. I don't think that men need to abandon completely duty as well as responsibility or expectations, because I think that you have to figure out where your purpose or where your direction or where your North Star in life is at. And that can only come with trying different things. And a lot of young men today are absolutely missing that because we're in the age of distraction. There's so many things that can hit our eyes within a time within a day that are dopamine rich, and you could just focus on that instead of focusing on the tough questions that allow you to kind of pick and decide what a purpose would be. It's sort of like you're exchanging the short-term benefits of that dopamine rich experience, doom scrolling or video game playing, like overconsumption of video game playing, in lieu of working hard at something in order to figure out more about yourself, who you are, what makes you tick, and what makes you happy. The decades-long war that media has waged onto men and masculinity has done incomprehensible damage onto the psyches of many of these young men. And we can even see from a political perspective what that has done even in their direction of political party affiliation that they are now gravitating towards. Shaming a man for simply existing, choosing the bear over him, while also introducing a tough pathway of figuring it out in the age of entertainment, of figuring out who they are to participate in a society that doesn't seem to want them or like them. Some of them are going to rationalize from opting out.
Why is it that men will reluctantly accept their fate anytime an injustice is pointed out? It is what it is, or that's just part of being a man?
It goes back to all these questions that as a man, I feel like you do have a burden of responsibility and more responsibility in general to make, your loved ones, your children, and your wife happy.
And how would our society react if we told women that they had a feminine burden of performance?
Probably not good.
Yeah, there's that idea in our culture sometimes that we can't speak up for ourselves, and that is just complaining. We don't want to hear about it. I see that argument, but a lot of it is you have to go out there and advocate for yourself.
Well, how can men's issues ever be heard if we're told that real men don't complain?
Ooh, the manipulation is crazy.
I think that, honestly, like, going out there and complaining without a solution can be sometimes a bad idea, but outright, if you go out there and advocate for yourself, provide solutions in society, I think that's a really masculine thing to do, actually.
Sure.
Why have men been tricked into thinking that it's unmanly to advocate for themselves?
There's a lot of feminist content out there where women are just kind of, I think women do ultimately drive the dating conversations.
They do.
And men want to center around being what they want from them. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a factor there, but if you do it in an intelligent way, I think it'll work.
Do you believe that women were oppressed back when they were expected to be traditional, back before feminism?
Yes.
Okay.
If so, how are men not oppressed by holding them to a traditional standard today?
Oh, shit.
They are oppressed.
Why is our society not acknowledging that?
Men, I feel like men are not speaking up for themselves. I feel like women fought for where they're at now.
I am over here.
And men stay quiet.
Is it possible that men stay quiet or aren't heard because they are oppressed?
Yes, absolutely.
So how are men supposed to be able to be heard if we're told that real men don't complain?
I feel like the same way a woman spoke up. If women stay quiet about they should be feminine, they should cook, they should clean, stay home with the kids. If women stay quiet, there wouldn't be a change now today. They wouldn't have the option. It wouldn't be okay to be who they want to be today. So I feel like if men spoke up, it slowly but surely, it's not an overnight thing. It'll become, a change will happen.
Why can't men seem to fathom that things could possibly be any other way?
I think it's because right now you're shamed if you're not to that standard. And so, like, to take the risk and to change the path is a scary thing.
When you're born that way, hey, that's the line God gave you, and it is what it is. And you take your role and you move in power, or you succumb to it and become a bum. It's up to you. And as a woman, you'll support your man and make sure he is the highest of the highest, so that way you guys can go to the top and raise your children, or go be single people. It's up to you guys.
Lastly, Harriet Tubman once said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves. How does this apply to modern men?
Well, it's like the whole, like, there's so many people that are NPCs and they don't know it. So it's just, if you're stuck in a pattern, you don't see, like, even in a relationship, you don't see the problems unless you're an outside perspective. So I think it's that of, like, you don't even know what's going on sometimes because you're not taking an outside view on it and you're just stuck.
There's so many trappings in life, man. I think that people don't know what their life could look like if they were able to be freed from the so-called matrix or, you know, all the trappings of life. It takes some time and it takes some self-discovery, but I think it's ultimately worth it.
Okay. Listen, shout out to It's Complicated. Hold on, let's see. Let's put this, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Rumble. Does he put it on there? Wow. You got to put it on there, baby. But yeah, you can find him putting It's Complicated down on all of these platforms. And I'll leave a link to this video down in the description so you guys can go over there and communicate with the young brother. But I think like these conversations are so critically important. You saw towards the end there, it started to shift towards, you know, men talking and speaking up, right? And I think about, again, one of the many underpinnings of this platform right here is restoring power to men, giving clarity to women. And this is why social pressure absolutely matters. And having these conversations absolutely matters. And building the platform to have these conversations absolutely matters, okay? Because if you have one side of the coin that doesn't get checked for entitlement, privileged behavior, bad behavior, right? Then people begin to get comfortable with doing anything, okay? There's masculine duty, but then there's also feminine duty as well. Women have duties as well. And it is okay for you not to accept bullshit at a moment's notice. Relationships have to be, to a degree, balance of contribution. Now, I'm not saying you have to contribute the same things. It's whatever both y'all find valuable, all right? But hopefully the value is somewhere in between responsibility and effort. We are not equal, but we can be equally valued for very, very different roles. And that's okay. Double standards are okay. And it's fine. We're not the same. And I think that that's great. So anyway, guys, leave me a comment down below as we continue to call out the BS as we see it here today. Let me know what you think about the video. Do you agree with the things that I'm saying? Disagree? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Light up that comment section. Let's continue to have this conversation. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Keep on keeping on. All right. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. Until next time. Peace.
So without further ado, MTR, cut through the BS like we in charge. No cap with the rappers like steel bars. I'm packing and rapping like here we are. Mediocre tutorial reviews. Like, comment, share my views. Come up and I paid my dues. Big step in my black way shoes. MTR, he break it down, yeah, it's MTR. Check out the sound with his MTR. No one put it down like it's MTR.